Good morning. I'm Laurie McMahon. They couldn't have a child of their own. I have used that term throughout my life, never thinking anything of it other than what we would assume it to mean, a problem with fertility that prevents conceiving or carrying a child. However, last year I was writing about my heritage, and in reference to my parents, I used that very phrase, they couldn't have a child of their own. Yet as I typed the phrase, I found myself deleting it, retyping it, deleting it again. I couldn't move on without hitting that delete button multiple times. While I understood intellectually what that phrase meant, I suppose I never thought about how it related to me, specifically the words, child of their own. I was adopted shortly after my birth, and never have I considered myself anything but my parents' own. And just as a child grows up knowing and understanding who their parents are, not needing to be told, I knew and understood that my parents were my adoptive parents. I have no memory of being told I was adopted because it was always a part of the fabric of our family. And as a very young child, I understood these simple things. I came from another woman's body, my parents could not produce a child biologically, and that my adopted family was my real family. I also came to the realization early on that I was incredibly lucky to have been placed for adoption. I learned as a child that many people, not just kids, did not truly understand adoption. For most of my life, I've been asked if I knew my real parents. Sometimes upon learning I was adopted, people would offer me sympathy. A few assumed I was an orphan. And my personal favorite? I was at my friend's house. She's the youngest of 5 kids, and an older sister, in taunting my friend, said, "Tracy was adopted. Mom and Dad found her in the gutter." I can still hear her perfectly, and I vividly remember my indignation as I muttered a quiet, yet definitive, "That's not what adoption means." Occasionally, I would talk to my mom about what I'd hear from people. When Elizabeth, an elementary school classmate, would tell me my mom wasn't my real mom, nor were my dad, brother, grandparents, aunt real, my mom would say, "You tell Elizabeth we're your family by love, and that love is more important than blood." Giving me that message led me to understand and embrace that family is not solely those to whom you are bound by DNA or a legal document. Through the extensive circle of close family friends my parents had as their village, I had many aunts, uncles, and cousins and grandparents. For the most part, I was as close to them as my actual relatives in my adoptive family, often closer. I cherish those relationships, and I'm grateful my parents had such open hearts and the wisdom to look beyond blood when growing our family. For much of my life, I was asked if I knew my birth parents. I don't. The next question typically was, do you want to try and find them? I don't. I've spent a lot of time studying adoption and what it means to adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents. I believe I'm in the minority of adoptees and not wanting to meet them. As a child, I don't remember being particularly curious as to who they were. My parents didn't have much information, and all I remember hearing from them is, "Your birth mother loved you very much, but knew she couldn't take care of you, so she wanted you to be with parents who could." However, I must have had at least a spark of curiosity in my mind, because one night as a child, a story came on the news about a multiple birth, a large one, quintuplets or more. I can still remember staring at the screen as pieces of the puzzle of my relinquishment were solved. I knew with the certainty of an 8-year-old that I had been one of 5, 6, or 7 babies. That's what happened, I thought. They didn't have enough cribs for me. I was so sure I didn't even think to ask my parents if I was right. And here's the thing. My parents had done such a beautiful job of making me feel wanted that I never once doubted that I had been the fortunate one. Not the rejected one, not the runt of the litter, so to speak, to have been the one to go. It wasn't until a few years later that I asked my mom if that's what happened. She laughed. In college, I interned at the Children's Home Society in the very building from which I was adopted. While working there, I learned I could find out non-identifying information about my birth parents. The circumstances surrounding my adoption were not typical. My birth mother was in her late 20s, married with a 2-year-old daughter. Her husband was not my birth father. Learning that, my resolve to not search for her was strengthened. I felt and still feel that she made a very conscious decision to let me be someone else's daughter, and that this was the best for all involved. With strong conviction, I believe putting up a baby for adoption is incredibly selfless, loving, and courageous. For as long as I can remember, I have felt gratitude for my birth mother. But mostly, that's the extent of what I feel. Sometimes when I remembered, I would think about her on my birthday, wondering, then later assuming, that this day was emotional for her. I hoped she was well and at peace with her decision. I do not feel as though I have two mothers, but I can't really deny I do. As I write this today, I acknowledge the role of biology in one maternal connection, but of much more significance is the role of love and nurturing of my real mom and dad, who had the generosity and confidence to raise me with the influence and affection of a wide circle of chosen family and the understanding that there are many ways to become a family, a gift that has nourished me and made me grateful for all the family in my life. Thank you.